All right. Good evening, everyone. Happy Halloween Eve. I don't know if there's a formal name for that, but hope you're all
Hmm.
doing well. Hope you're having a good week so far. If we haven't worked together before, my name is Kristen Fouts. I have the honor of serving the fraternity as the Director of Education and Chapter Development. If you've participated in these webinars before, you have seen me before. You might have also seen my colleague, John. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Good evening, gentlemen, and Kristen as well. Um, just to give you a heads up, my name is John Colon. I'm the Associate Director for Chapter Development, so I may have met some of you during convention recently, or you've probably seen an email or two from me over the past if we haven't met previously during a chapter visit. But I'm one of Kristen's colleagues, and I'm usually the ground person with regards to reaching out to you guys for chapter visits and helping out with leadership development in terms of officers in the chapter. Nice meeting everyone.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So this is, before we dive in, this is actually our last officer webinar for the semester. So even though it's only the end of October, we are turning over our time, yielding our November time to our Israel Now program on November 10th. So hope that you will all register for that program and attend that amazing program that our Director of Heritage and Integrity, Ryan Wallishan, has put together in place of having an officer webinar. So that is good for SOE credit, as well as just being a really fantastic personal development opportunity. So feel free to check out the Israel Now information. John, would you mind posting the link there in the chat to the website at some point so
Of
folks can know about that? More
course.
information will also be in the officer newsletter that will be coming out within the next couple days. So tonight's topic, timely for most of our chapters, not all of our chapters, but most, since a lot of you are probably coming up on elections, you might already be kind of in the early stages. Maybe you have, brothers that are starting to learn about, officer positions. You're hopefully sharing with them about what the elections process looks like and so on. We wanted to provide some tips, some, insights, some information related to helping make that transition, that election process smooth, helping to set up your successors for success, but also to talk about succession planning, which is kind of a next level practice. Your chapter may or may not be doing it sort of formally at this point, but we wanted to cover both topics because both can really have a significant impact on the short-term and long-term health of your chapter from a leadership perspective. So we will dive in here. So first, I will just kind of explain what is succession planning. You might have heard about succession planning more, in the corporate world. If you have family or friends that are working for big corporations, big companies, you've probably heard that term or you've heard it, in certain business settings, but it definitely applies to fraternity landscape as well, and certainly to your chapter operation. So we'll define that. I will tell you a little bit about how to create a succession plan, not going too far into depth. It doesn't need to be difficult or overly complicated. But you might be able to set some things in motion this fall to help your chapter kind of start to set up a plan to make that succession or those expectations for leadership development a little bit more clear for years beyond. Then I'm going to turn the floor over to John. John is going to tell you about some tips. He'll share some tips with you about effective officer transitions, what they should be, shouldn't be, things that they should include for incoming as well as outgoing officers. And at that point, we also really would love to hear from you. What does your chapter do that makes transitions, officer preparation, et cetera, particularly smooth, successful, efficient, effective? Questions, certainly concerns that you might have about your transition process. We'll kind of open up the floor there. And then since we have the captive audience, we want to kind of share some upcoming program dates that, again, are relevant to mostly your incoming officers, but also a couple other things that are relevant this time of year for chapters to know about. So all along throughout the program, if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat pane and we will try to address those. Again, we will ask for your engagement and your involvement when we get to the officer transition piece. And then of course, as always, at the end of the webinar, we will have the QR code to our evaluation. We want you to complete that, and that is your proof of attendance for SOE credit. So let us dive in. So again, succession planning, typically something that you probably hear about in more of a corporate, type of realm. But again, it's totally applicable to our setting and our circumstances. So succession planning really at its core is having a process in place that identifies, that develops a leadership pipeline for your chapter's key leadership roles. So those are your 8 core executive board officer positions, could also be some of your chair positions, some of your committee chairman positions, but especially those top 8 seats and on the executive board. The succession plan identifies individuals with leadership potential. Many of you have just done some level of recruitment. You have, young, fresh leaders, with great potential in your chapters. So starting to identify them now, having conversations now about their interests, about their passions, about their skill sets that could lend themselves, well for your chapter. So they could help you be more efficient, more effective in one of those leadership positions. Providing those young/new leaders or potential leaders with training and experience to take on new roles. I'll talk in the next slide some specific opportunities that you can do that, but you want to start early. You want to expose them to the workings, the internal workings of the chapter, instead of just having them watch, the e-board at work during a chapter meeting. You want them to be able to have some insights, have some knowledge about what it means to be on the executive board, what each position does. They don't need to know, all the details, when these forms are due and all of that. But they need to understand the purpose, the function, the value of those executive board positions. And then finally, a key part is setting a clear election and transition process. So they need to know really from the jump when they join the organization, this is when we do elections. We would love for you to ask questions, to consider getting involved. This is what our transition process looks like. This is how we set new leaders up for success. So set that intention, set that, or share that clear communication right off the bat. So communicating that plan can help you recruit new brothers. It's a great opportunity, especially if you might be recruiting students from other student organizations, from your student government association, other sort of locations or other groups on campus that are also very leadership oriented, helping them understand that this is the plan we have in place to help identify leaders, to build leaders, to make their transition and their time in office, successful and effective. It also helps you retain current brothers. So if you have anywhere, obviously from first year members all the way up to seniors, they can hold different positions, and giving them opportunities to engage increases buy-in. We see a lot of apathy sometimes, especially in older students. Maybe they, put in a year or two in a leadership position, they get burnt out. There are still ways that we can engage them that could ultimately be the thing that helps them stay in the chapter through graduation and of course into their alumni phase. So setting brothers up for success as leaders, helping them develop their leadership potential and their leadership skills, and giving them continuous and ongoing leadership opportunities, different sort of levels of engagement and different levels of work can also help retain members at different stages of their active membership. And of course, finally, as I mentioned, it can help them develop new skills. So one of the outcomes of being a leader should be to help other people build leadership skills. So you might have heard that, as a leader in your chapter, you should replace yourself with someone better. And you can be part of the process of helping that younger brother become better than you are today, so that he can lead your chapter in an even more, positive and productive direction. So we want to be, again, identifying those young potential leaders, building them up, giving them exposure, giving them opportunities to lead. All of that will help them develop their skill set, both for the betterment of the chapter and of course, just for their own personal and really pre-professional development. So again, I mentioned that we want to communicate all of this from the start. So share this, this whole plan. So what the succession plan is, how we identify new leaders, how we train them, how we set them up for success. At New Brother Orientation, which again, some of your chapters have done. If you're, if you have done recruitment this term, you had New Brother Orientation. That should be part of the process. Welcome to our chapter. We value leadership. We value building you as a leader, and here's how we do this. So don't think just because you've already done New Brother Orientation that you don't have an opportunity to do that. You might do another one in the spring. And again, you can kind of set the plan now to include that in your orientation in the spring. Communicate that process, often throughout the semester. Again, if your chapter is doing elections here this semester, again, start communicating now. Here is our plan to help with officer transitions. We do a retreat, etc. Whatever those steps might be, set the tone early that leaders are needed, that they are valued, that they are important, and that we will support you throughout the process. Okay, so that's a little bit about what succession planning is. So if your chapter does not have a succession plan, again, no fear, don't worry. Yes, Steve, we will share the recording out as well, and we can send the PowerPoint as well. So how to create a succession plan. Again, if you don't have something formal in place, don't worry, plenty of time. Develop or create a working group of sorts. So find someone who, has held a number of leadership positions, find, a younger brother, and then find a couple in between, different ages, stages, leadership levels of experience in your chapter. Bring that group together to talk about what has worked, what hasn't worked in terms of, again, leadership preparation, in terms of what we communicate about leadership, in terms of, again, our officer transition process, what has worked and what hasn't. Identify opportunities for improvement. Hopefully you will get some ideas tonight. But set that plan on a timeline. So starting, in August, September, your chapter comes back, from summer break. What can you start communicating then during recruitment, during brother orientation, going into elections, and then after elections, what is that, that transition process look like? Then you have new officers. How do we continue to support them in the spring semester? How are we continuously looking for, new brothers, potential in young leaders, giving them opportunities to connect and get exposure. So design that experience on a timeline, as well as, again, kind of defining, again, those experiences, those opportunities for members to be able to potentially shadow. I know Cornell and several other chapters do a great job shadowing. Charlotte, I think too, Tyler, where, you have a brother who says, I think I'm interested in finance. Maybe he, meets with the finance director, a couple times, kind of gets to know the position. Maybe he's even already elected into the position, but the outgoing finance director, there's like maybe a 2 or 3 or month-long overlap, where the incoming and the outgoing are kind of working in sync, to make sure that new officer feels comfortable, feels confident, and that the outgoing officer feels comfortable and confident in leaving, the role to that new person. So shadowing can be a really powerful experience. Think about also, again, from a recruitment standpoint, what are the criteria, the leadership criteria that we might be looking for in potential new brothers? So do we want them, are they, do we require them, so to speak, to, have held a leadership position in high school? Or what kind of characteristics, what kind of skill sets are we looking for? We shouldn't just be looking for good guys. We should be looking for men that are able and willing to help push our chapter forward in a positive direction, help elevate our chapter. So think about what are some of those leadership qualities and characteristics that you can build into your recruitment criteria, so that as you're evaluating potential new brothers, you can say, yep, checks this box, or kind of, has this potential. Here's how we could build this up in him. Okay. Again, then finally define that transition program. What does it look like from, even just before elections happen to when the outgoing officers are fully transitioned out and we are just with our new executive board? What does that entire process look like? Again, is there shadowing? There should be, we'll talk a little bit more about the transitions in just a little bit, but meetings between the officers involving advisors, retreat potentially with the new board, et cetera. So define that plan and stick with it. All of that then should be documented as your succession plan and then communicated with brothers throughout the year. It doesn't necessarily need to go into your constitution or bylaws. It's just kind of a standing document that your chapter refers to as you prepare for elections. And again, different opportunities and experiences throughout the year. Okay, so that's kind of how you can kind of create that succession plan. Okay, so as we start to transition, again, John will come in the next slide and talk more specifically about officer transitions, but I wanted to kind of set just a few, very quick, sort of, this is what officer transitions should do. These are things that officer transitions, this is how they should look like, this is how they should operate. So officer transitions don't just happen, right? We don't just elect someone and then automatically that new person knows exactly what they're supposed to be doing, and the outgoing officer knows exactly when they're supposed to head out and what they're supposed to communicate, et cetera. They don't just happen. We have to make them happen, and we have to help them be successful. They do require effort on the part of the incoming and the outgoing officer. The outgoing officer can be completely burnt out and just over it, right? Especially if you've had a really rough year or semester. They can be ready to go. They still need to put the effort in. That's where integrity comes into play with regard to leadership. They still need to put the effort in to make sure that they are preparing their successor as much as they can to take on those reins. There should be a formal process and an informal process. And again, John will talk a little bit about both of those pieces. There's a structured process and then sort of more informal components. It needs to have a specific time frame. It shouldn't just kind of, start whenever the two people decide they want to connect and then, end, in May. There needs to be a defined window, maybe let's say 4 weeks, 6 weeks, including winter break in there. Needs to have a defined window again, so those new incoming officers know when they can expect to be on their own, essentially, and the outgoing officers know when they can expect to, be able to kind of take a step back. Should always involve alumni or advisors. If you don't have great relationships or solid communication with either, can definitely involve headquarters. Okay, John and I are available. We will share our email addresses at the end. If you need help with your officer transition process or setting up that succession plan, reach out to us, and we are more than happy to help you get that going. Okay. All right. I will turn it over to John to talk more about transitions. I can't hear you, at least, John. Sorry.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes. Thank you.
All right, apologies for that. All right, so when you think about transitions, an effective officer transition, it's something that maintains effective continuity. So, outgoing president should, in essence, leave some documents for the incoming president in terms of like what worked well for them, what didn't work well for them, who are good people on their executive board that they can constantly rely on, who are people that, are good at handling certain things and not. And then also, who are people within the university administration that worked well on their end to better them, and even on the chapter advisor side. You guys may have chapter advisors that, are there mainly just to sign off papers, and then you have other ones that are more hands-on. So, keep those in mind when you're thinking about officer transition. Another thing is in helping ensure the successful transfer of important information. What were your minutes? You may want to talk to your communications director. What were minutes looking like in the past? How were they maintained? How were documents in terms of finance? Speak to your finance director. They should have some sort of ledger in terms of what was paid on time, what was not paid on time, what are things that are owed. The important documents to kind of keep in mind, especially if you're new to the position itself. The last thing you want is to be caught off guard, trying to wing something which may not work out in the best, regardless of the situation itself. Another thing is helping to build upon achievements. Your outgoing president or your outgoing operations director, they may have been the perfect person at their job. So make sure that you highlight those things and make sure that you continue going those things. Ask them how they did it. Ask them what worked well. What were things that they wish that they could have done better? Building on those achievements will help your incoming transition be a lot better, and also kind of gives you something to kind of aspire to, something you may want to, excel to going forward. Reinforcing positive and productive communication between officers and between the executive board and chapter. You guys have to think of it in terms of a business. You have the CEO, you have the COO, and things like that. You want to make sure that that communication is constant and remains very fluid and transparent between the executive board and the rest of the chapter. You guys are all brothers at the end of the day, but remember, there is some sort of leadership team in place. So you want to make sure that that level of communication is there, especially when, unfortunately, it comes to hard times. Maybe things didn't go the way that you guys wanted to. You guys want to make sure that you continue that open and transparent communication between leadership and the chapter, but making sure that you're also reinforcing the positive stuff too. Hey guys, great job on recruitment. Our recruitment director, really planned this out to the letter. As president, I want to make sure that that gets highlighted, things like that to keep in mind. Another thing is providing an opportunity for incoming officers to plan for the future and establish new goals. Yes, it's a great thing to kind of, continue on a legacy from your outgoing president, your outgoing operations director, and the rest of the cabinet. But at the same time, too, you want to put yourself out there. You want to make yourself stand out. So making sure that the incoming officers, whether you guys are having, a leadership retreat, a one-day kind of half meeting, making sure that you're establishing new goals that you guys want to accomplish together as a cabinet, and also individually within your position itself. So there's just some things to kind of think about with that. So what you see in front of you, in essence, is the best timeline that you could probably see in terms of when that planning should be taking place. For those that may have not heard, we do have this great tool that's called TLAD. It does have leadership resources in there, anything from how to do your position, how to properly run it, how to run an effective meeting, things like that. So make sure that you guys are taking a look at that in advance rather than leaving it to last minute and, kind of scrambling to kind of figure out how do I do this, or, what exactly does my position entail? So that's somewhere in the timeline of around October that you guys should be looking at. The next thing that would be coming up, obviously, is your election cycle. Officers voting. You want to make sure that you're putting the right people in place and making sure that you're also encouraging newer brothers to kind of step into those roles. Maybe it could be that you have someone that may shadow someone that's currently on the current cabinet. Let them get a feel for the position. They may think the position is great for them when they first hear about it, but then they start seeing what actually goes on behind the scenes, and maybe something else on the e-board might be actually better in their place. Probably about maybe 2 or so weeks later, you probably want to go into officer installation, in terms of now that those officers have been voted on, they're now being installed into their current position, and the outgoing officers are now, leaving their position, whether they're leaving it towards something more on the executive board, or maybe you have those juniors or seniors that kind of just want to take a step back and enjoy their brotherhood experience from the chapter perspective at that point. As you're going through those progressions, think about how the transition program wants to look like. Maybe you do a leadership retreat, maybe it's a weekend thing, a one-day thing, but think about how, in essence, you want your new executive board to mold themselves, taking from things from the outgoing cabinet, and then what are things that you're implementing that maybe they did good, maybe things that didn't work out well in their favor, but you kind of want, in essence, put your own personal spin on it to see if it can be successful in your time. So think about like that. Also think about how you're going to be sharing documents, making sure that you're keeping that transition in the back of your head, because at the end of the day, the incoming executive board is now the new leadership in place. Coming around to the new year, you guys are going to start thinking about, how can I better myself in terms of my position? Well, as the ZBT headquarters can offer, there are programs available to you that are available to you either virtually, either in person, and even at the national convention level at that point. But our main priorities are going to be, our regional officer institute. There's different cities that are going to be available to you to kind of travel to, depending on what your travel needs are available at that time. So keep an eye on those when those come out through email, through the ZBT website, things like that. It's also very important that we put a strong emphasis when you're working on those officer transitions, that you constantly build that connection between the new officers and the incoming, the new officers and the ZBT headquarters at that point. Because we as the team, we're here to support you guys. We're here to make sure that you guys get off on the right foot and give you guys the best available resources to you at the university level. Obviously universities have other programs that they may be available to you, but they can't cater it to you in terms of what the ZBT mindset and way should look like at that point. So keep an eye out for those. Come around time for January 31st, end of the month, going into February, you might want to plan maybe like another retreat or maybe just like a small get together, because you guys are about to go into the spring semester. Spring semester, obviously, you have spring recruitment. You have possibly brothers that are getting ready to graduate. How are you guys setting yourself up for success going into the spring and then possibly over the summer and eventually into the fall? You know, the last bullet point right there is that you guys did it. Pretty much you, whether you choose to run or not again, it's your way to, in essence, celebrate yourselves, making sure that you guys are going out in a positive mindset, highlighting the good things you did, and then also leaving behind what are areas of opportunities that you're incoming, the people that are coming in after you can kind of work on at that point. So just keep a few things those in mind when you're prepping for elections and how you're transitioning those new officers coming in. All righty. So just some things for, outgoing officer versus incoming officer. So if you're an outgoing officer, regardless of the position that you've held and are getting ready to move on to either something else within the executive board, or just planning on, taking a step back and being more of the participant within the chapter itself. So for the outgoing officer, if you're that person, make sure that you're organizing your files and your documents. Make sure that you're keeping them somewhere that's accessible to the person that is taking over the position that you previously held, and making sure that it's also something that's legible, easy to read, easy to understand at that point. Because the last thing you also want to do is to leave something to someone that they don't really understand or kind of, get the mindset that how you ran things and how maybe you kind of want to see it moving forward. Finishing all correspondence. So that could be, documents that you guys started working on. Maybe you just recently chartered. So you want to make sure that all your charter documents were in place at that point. For the finance director, making sure that, all your bills are being paid, all your correspondence is in the right place. Next thing you want to move on to is writing out a timeline and projects and dates in common within the position. Different people do different things within the organization. So you want to make sure that those people are understanding of what needs to be done, what has been done at that point, and then when it should be done. Because obviously there's a timeline for everything. Graduation is a timeline for you guys because you guys are eventually going to hit that at the end of your 4 years. So you want to make sure that within the chapter itself, you guys have projects that are being met within a timely manner. Another thing too is the outgoing officer, meet with the person that is taking over your position. Let them know what was your mindset, what were things that worked out well for you, what were things that, didn't work out well, and then how can that new person do better moving forward in the position. Sharing contact information. Other than the headquarters staff, you want to make sure that they know who's who on campus, who is your chapter advisor, who is your alumni advisory board, who are alumni that are very reliable in the area, maybe possibly some vendors in terms of event planning, things like that. Just make sure that it's something that's accessible to the person that's taking over your position, whether it be like on a USB flash drive, on a binder. I'm old school. I kind of kept everything on paper at that point. So whatever was available to you guys, but do what works best for you. So that way you're setting up the person coming in after you to have an easier job and an easier transition coming in. Lastly, as the outgoing officer, share what your goals were. Maybe you wanted to work directly with the recruitment director to maybe increase brotherhood retention by 10%. Maybe you were the social programming chair at that point and you want to make sure that you hosted a certain amount of events per semester so that way your presence on campus was visible, was available, and stuff like that. Moving over to the other side of the spectrum, for the incoming officer, that means you, the person that is coming into the new position, whether it's the position you currently had and just ran again for a new cycle, or if you were an incoming brother to that position as a new officer. Reviewing all your chapter governing documents, making sure that you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing, who's supposed to be doing what, and making sure that you're also holding those people accountable. Because now you on the executive board, your job is to hold each other accountable to make sure that you guys are as successful as a chapter as you can be. The other thing too is you also want to make sure that you're meeting the requirements that we as the headquarters staff want to uphold with you guys at the same time too. Making sure that you're sending people to the correct conferences, making sure that people are being registered as new brothers, so on and so forth. Another thing, meet with the outgoing officer. Same process. You're basically on the other side of the table. You're mainly just there listening to kind of see, what things worked out best for them. What can I do better to, in essence, better maybe some of the projects that they were working on. Also, make sure you take the time to go over some of the documents that person is handing over to you, making sure that it's something that you understand. And if you don't understand, making sure that you're asking those questions so that way you're setting yourself up for as much proactive success that can, because once you take that officer role, you are that person. You are the go-to person, which means you need to hit the ground running, but with a good understanding of what you're supposed to be doing at the same time too. Moving on, you want to make sure that you're meeting with the people that are on your executive board, the people that are on your team leading the chapter. Draft goals, think of ideas that you guys want to accomplish for the spring term, and then possibly even the fall term at that point. Recruitment is a big thing. Philanthropy, education, things like that. Making sure that you guys are hitting, everything on your mental checklist that you guys are working on, so that way at the end of the day and at the end of the semester, at the end of the year, once again, always highlight your accomplishments, figure out what you guys could have done better, and then work on those as goals moving forward at that point. And then lastly, just remember and make sure that you're attending those designated conferences available to you as chapter officers, whether it be PLA, which is the President's Leadership Academy. That one is mainly tailored to our chapter presidents. So making sure that we're helping you guys set yourself up for success, but giving you the tools and the resources available through ZBT, through something that you yourself take pride in and wanting to know. When it comes to, doing virtual things, the Virtual Officer Institute is basically kind of a prerequisite to the Regional Officer Institute. So making sure that you're keeping an eye out for those dates and how to get signed up properly to make sure that you're attending and being present during that conversation as well. And then finally, with ROI, that's our Regional Officer Institute. That's available to every single person that's within the executive board. Some people want to find out how to finely tune their position, how to do things properly. We at ZBT, in terms of the national headquarters staff, we're giving those tools to you. So we want you to take advantage of them as much as possible. So just make sure you utilize your resources, making sure that you guys are asking questions, and rely on your chapter brothers and your executive board, because without that, you may not be as successful as you want to be. Alrighty. So can I get one or two, I guess, people to share what their transition process kind of looks like at their chapter?
Yeah, I'm here. Oh, my fault. You go ahead.
Oh no, go for it, Tyler.
Word, I'll go for it. Yeah, so we kind of follow that timeline pretty well. We're doing voting this week at chapter.
Nice.
And then like you talked about earlier, we shadow pretty heavily, especially with the positions who I feel like where things are a little bit more particular, like with finance or with president and VP with SOE and stuff like that. Like especially those positions that take a lot more sitting down and focusing, I feel like, is what we really focus on shadowing. With the other positions though, I feel like people just naturally, like the person who wants to be brother right now in Brotherhood and the person who wants to be Brotherhood next, they just naturally, they're around me more. They watch me a little bit more. So they kind of already lean towards being more informed about what I do and stuff like that. We do need to work. I think we need to work on implementing a good retreat. I don't think I've never done that. I think that'd really help bring everybody together and get everybody focused on the same page. And then me and Josh right now are working on it's just one big document with each officer on it. And it's kind of like the shortcuts to everything we do and the resources that we use and what the next officer, like with formals. I was the first Brotherhood in a long time to do formals both semesters. So like putting all the resources I use from catering to locations and venues and stuff like that, just so the next person has at least somewhere to start, because I had nowhere to start from, and that was really tough for me. So yeah, that's just some stuff we've been working on to help with our officer transitions recently.
Good stuff. Glad to hear that, Tyler, and hopefully everything continues going positive for you guys. I appreciate that you guys are doing whatever you can. So keep up the good work.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Santa Clara, I think you were trying to jump in and kind of give your 2 cents too.
Yeah, I mean, now our process is going to sound really bad after Tyler. No, that's part of the reason I'm here. We, in the past, I guess we're relatively new. We got founded in 2015, if I remember correctly. So yeah, in the past, we've also grown a ton in like the past 2 years. Went from 40 to we're at 110 now, I want to say.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty huge growth. We're trying to get stuff like this in play. Because frankly, we haven't had any. This is my second year on board. I'm the VP now.
Okay.
And I remember I joined as the recruitment director, and the old recruitment director was basically like, "All right, take the wheel, like go ahead." And I was like, "All right, what do I do? Like what goes on?" And I guess I had the idea of just kind of sitting down and listening. But some people, when they get added to e-board, don't, and that's how we end up in deep water, where we shouldn't be. But yeah, I don't know. I've got a lot of very good ideas from this. So thank you guys. We're gonna start implementing honestly past communication with people who held that position before you. Kind of like if anyone watches Avatar: The Last Airbender on here, you might realize that. So you can kind of get some advice if you truly don't know what to do, as well as a lengthier shadow process. We are a quarter system, so it's a little weird trying to format the semester template that you have to quarters. But yeah, our elections are next quarter, like halfway through, and usually it's just they start coming to eBoard and they listen and hopefully they get it. But I'm gonna institute some officer training so they can get their new guys up to speed and hopefully makes that transition a little smoother, because we definitely have hit some road bumps these past couple of years with new guys coming in.
Good stuff, Riley, and definitely happy to hear that stuff. As always, we as the headquarters staff, we're available to you guys whenever you guys need those resources. So like if you're looking to put on a training for them, definitely let myself, let Kristen know. We'll be more than happy to see what we can do to, in essence, tailor that experience to how you want to present it to them at that point, and then kind of give you, the resources and the ball to run with at that point. But I'm glad that you're proactive about it, and I'm glad that you recognize that there's definitely a lot of opportunity for you guys to work on. So thank you for that.
Sounds great. Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of challenges of being a smaller campus, I guess. And I guess all of Greek life is unaffiliated with the university, so
Okay.
it's a lot of independent study, if you know what I mean.
Listen, man, sometimes you just kind of have to run with it and kind of hope that it works out for the best. But it definitely seems like you guys have a good head on your shoulder. So, do we have any officers that have held a position or held another position on the executive board more than once?
Do you mean like 2 years in the same position?
Yeah, because the reason why I asked that is because it's also nice to hear how someone that has held a position for a 10-year time kind of deals with the transition process too, because they're literally talking to themselves on the other end of the table.
Yeah. I don't think we've had that. I'm not sure about any of the other guys. But yeah, usually most of our board is pretty worn out after the year.
All right, good stuff. Anybody else that has held the position more than once or another executive board position in general?
Yeah, so I've held operations director for 2 years. Last year was a lot of just kind of like reflection and trying to understand what I can improve upon, and also trying to adapt to different e-boards. Like last year's, we had a very upperclassman e-board that was more experienced and knew what they were kind of doing. And this year we're a little bit more of younger members and kind of figuring out, how to make our own kind of way and pave our way into our something new. So we just kind of been able to like adapt while to kind of work with both different types of e-boards.
Nice. Well, thanks for sharing that, Cameron. I'm glad that you have done your part in leading the chapter, whether it be from one position to the other or the same position over, a course of time. So thanks for sharing. And I'm glad that people were able to hear that, because it's also nice to hear the perspective from someone who's held their position, more than once, or at least another position on the executive board, to kind of get that perspective too.
Yeah, I think to share and use two cliches, anything is better than nothing, right? When it comes to officer transitions, anything you can do. Riley, you identified there's plenty of opportunities for, for development, for adding new things. You're already doing something, right? And that is far and beyond what some of our chapters, have accomplished so far. So, some it's just a good luck and, see you later. Some may not even do that. So the fact that, you're even thinking about it, you're wanting to improve, absolutely is a step in the right direction. But also, we expect progress, not perfection, right? So Tyler, Charlotte has a lot of things down pat. You do a lot of things really well. Clearly, the chapter performs highly every year, but there's always room for improvement. So, continuing to make progress, building in new components, evaluating, making changes, again, Cameron, adapting each year. Every year, the board is going to have a different tone, a different direction, a different vision, so you have to be able to adapt and kind of evolve the process overall. Sometimes campus policies change, technology, changes, a pandemic happens, right? Like you have to be able and willing to adapt, and kind of make the process work for us. So thank you very much, the three of you, for sharing your experiences there. So to kind of take us into the final, kind of third of the program. So speaking of those programs, as John was just saying, the fraternity obviously offers a variety of different opportunities for personal leadership development, for organizational leadership development, and transition support. So wanted to put some of these specific dates in front of you. So that President's Leadership Academy for incoming chapter presidents is January 10th through the 12th. We're going to be at a new camp. We've been in Charlotte for many years. Tyler, nothing against Charlotte. We love Charlotte, but we're moving a little bit west this year. We're going to try out a new to us camp just outside of Dallas. So if you are considering running for chapter president, mark your calendar for those dates, and we will see you there. Virtual Officer Institute is January 19th. The exact timing is TBD, but it will be in the afternoon. That's a Sunday. It will be in the afternoon. We also know that there are playoff football games that day, so we're going to be careful about that. But hopefully VOI takes precedence. So, and then finally ROI, as John mentioned, we have 4 sessions planned for this spring. So you can see the dates, you can see the locations. I'm very excited about all 4 of these sessions. The great thing for your chapter is that you can pick the session you want to go to. Obviously, by geography is probably easiest, but Monmouth, if Chicago doesn't work for you, then in terms of dates, go to Phoenix, go to any of the other sessions. You should be budgeting for this in your chapter budget. If you are not, please talk to us. There are some travel assistance funds available, but not a lot. So we don't want you to count on that. But again, we will be communicating much more about these programs, these dates. Registration links will be going out soon, etc. So as you are planning to take on another office, planning to do elections, planning to do transitions, make sure that all incoming officers know that these programs are happening, know that the expectation exists that they will participate, both for their benefit as well as for your chapter's benefit, and obviously reach out if you have questions about either of those. So 2 more things kind of along the lines of leadership development. So the next 2 slides are full on shameless plugs. So I'm not even going to apologize. Emerging Leaders Institute, talk about a leadership pipeline, right? You are recruiting great young new brothers. Hopefully they do show a good amount of leadership potential. They have held leadership roles in high school or at their previous institution. They show great qualities, great personality characteristics. That's why you recruited them, why they joined ZBT. Now let's help take them to the next level. Applications are now live. That QR code goes to the application, so feel free to share that link with new brothers. ELI is a fantastic experience. It's a 6-month experience for new members, new brothers in their first year of membership. When they apply, they should not already or currently hold an executive board position, but certainly we have had, and we encourage cohort participants to take on leadership roles. So if that happens in the process of participating, that's totally fine. They will have monthly virtual classes between February and July, and then an in-person capstone experience at convention in New Orleans. So fantastic experience. We had a great group last year and looking to build on that. So encourage someone to apply. I think that's just great from like a brotherhood perspective, as well as a real sort of leadership development perspective, like to say, hey, you, I see you, I believe in you. I think this could do great things for you. I want you to apply, and then kind of encourage them along the way. a little benefit for you if you encourage them. If they type your name in the application form, we're going to give away some ZBT swag as a thank you. So again, share that link with a new brother or 5 or 10, however many you want to encourage to apply. Applications are due on December 20th. So basically right before headquarters closes for winter break, they're due at that point, and then we'll do some phone interviews and whatnot in January. But again, if anyone has questions, please reach out to me about that program. Finally, another final shameless plug about Standards of Excellence. So all of this, all leadership development, elections, transitions, officer retreat, all of those things, many of those things are components or elements related to Standards of Excellence. So keep doing the work related to SOE elements, meaning, again, doing your brotherhood events, doing continuing recruitment events, hosting your educational workshops in your chapter, etc. Do those things through the end of this calendar year, but then you can keep submitting the evidence of those things through January. Okay, so the timelines are just offset to be able to give chapters enough time to submit things that you've done, like at the end of December, or to be able to get those fall grades submitted. Sometimes those don't come out until into January, sometimes even later. If your chapter does not currently participate in SOE, or your chapter has not been accredited, you don't think it's worth the effort, or it's too hard, please let me try to change your mind. Let's chat. I have some tips and tricks up my sleeve to kind of help you make some quick progress. We would love to see more of our chapters accredited. That tells us and tells you that your chapter is on the right track. Again, there's always room for improvement, but accreditation really is sort of a stamp of approval that you're doing good things, you're doing them, kind of to the expectation of the fraternity, and that's great for recruitment. That's great for a variety of things. It's just a good, strong kudos for your chapter to be accredited. Plus, you can go, potentially win awards at convention. But I know not every chapter is, motivated by that. But if we can at least get your chapter accredited, that would be a big thing. So changes are coming to SOE, aren't they, Cameron? You're very familiar. Cameron has been helping on a working group to revamp SOE. So changes are coming for 25 and beyond. But for now, let's focus on 24. Let's focus on getting your chapter accredited. And again, please reach out if you have questions about how your chapter can participate, how your chapter's been performing, how we can kind of take you to the next level. Okay. All right. I know we have just a few minutes left. Want to put up our email addresses here as continued support system for you all. There's the QR code. Feel free to scan that and start on the evaluation. But certainly, are there any questions? Is there anything that we can answer now related to the webinar, or if it's off topic, I can stop recording and we can talk about that then. Anything related to transitions, succession planning, or any other ideas that you might want to share?
Kristen, our chapter advisor is supposed to be going to the Regional Officer Institute.
Yes, great question. Thank you, Stu. So we are have at each of the ROIs, we will have an alumni luncheon. Obviously, the undergraduate participants will participate in that as well. It's a great sort of networking opportunity, but it's our opportunity to welcome local alumni to that session. So lunch will be for local alumni, for participants. And then we will have sort of an abbreviated advisor track for about 2 hours after lunch. So you'll come, right before lunchtime, let's say 11:30. It'll be a little bit different depending on the location and the timing until like 2:30, 3 o'clock. So we will do the luncheon. We will do a little bit of training, similar if you participated in the alumni or advisor track at convention, similar to that, but we will be putting out much more information about that. So that advisor track is not required. If you just want to come for lunch, that's fine. We would love for you to stay. And then, of course, you can sit in on, other sessions and whatnot, kind of observe, what the undergraduates are doing too.
National Convention in New Orleans. What's the dates, please?
Dates. It's a little bit later this year. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Is Ricky still here? Does he know off the top of his head? I don't know. Let me see here. International Convention is July 31st through August 2nd. So a little bit later than it usually has been. And the website is updated. Obviously, registration is not open yet, but all the who's and where's and all of that is on the website.
Okay.
Okay, good questions. Thank you. All right. Yes, thank you, John, for doing that. All right. Unless there are any other questions, we will let you go for the evening. As always, thank you so much for being here, for joining us, for engaging. Again, we will not have a November officer webinar, but please register for Israel Now. Again, more information will be coming out about Israel Now in the November officer newsletter, which should hit your inboxes within the next couple days. So again, really appreciate you being here. Appreciate listening to your ideas, and please let us know how we can help. Okay.
For sure.
All
And
right.
for
Thank you.
everybody currently on the call right now too, I did include my my personal cell phone number. So if you guys ever need me for anything in terms of transition and stuff like that, by all means feel free to call or text me. Usually a lot faster with text. So
Awesome. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
all right, guys.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for everything. Have a good night, everyone.
Kristen,
Yes,
would you mind staying on for 1 second? So I can ask
absolutely.
you, thank you.